in Cincinnati, Ohio, and this is considered one of the top 10 most dangerous cities in Ohio. Its ranking varies depending on which statistic you look at, but it's a top 10 as far as dangerous cities go in the state. And it's the 64th largest city in America. The population here is around 311,000, and it's growing slowly but steadily. It's 49% white, 37% black, 5% Hispanic, and 3% Asian. So it's fairly diverse as far as who lives here. And so far it's really on the clean side, at least the downtown, and even the bit that I drove through getting into the downtown, there wasn't, at least the part I drove through, there wasn't a ton of garbage or anything like that. It was relatively clean. And so far it looks like all the storefronts have businesses in them. That one had plywood on it, but it looked like that was because they were doing some remodeling and not because it was closed up. Oh, here's some, actually there's a couple closed up now. But it's relatively clean so far. The average age here is 33. And 16% of the adults are seniors. So it doesn't have a very old population. It has a lot of younger people living here. It's kind of cute. I mean, for their downtown area. They have a 39% home ownership rate, which is considered really low. Let's just go up this road and see what's up here. Anything above 50% would be considered pretty good, so 39% is on the low side. The average income here is $44,000 a year, which for a city of its size is probably a little on the low side, maybe about normal. But they have a 25% poverty rate. So 1 in every 4 people that live here live below the poverty line. And that's pretty high, especially for a city of this size, to have 25% people living below the poverty line. They have a 29% marriage rate, which is also really low. And that could possibly be due to the lack of seniors and the younger population. Maybe they're just not married yet. Either that or it's just a city that people just don't get married at when they live here. They have a 66% labor force participation rate. I don't include that. Those two, there's homeless people right there on this sidewalk. It's cold out too. It's maybe 40 degrees right now. It's early in the morning and it's not very warm. If there was those sewer grates or whatever, you'd probably see smoke coming out of them because it's that cold. And 69% of the people were born in Cincy or in Ohio, of the residents that live here. So that's a decent number. And they're showing 4% non-citizens, which I always throw that stat in, but that you have to have the people saying they're not citizens in order for that number to, grow. So, but that's what the city is claiming, is 4% are non-citizens. far as homicides go, in 2020 they had 99, 2021 they had 96, 2022 84, and 2023 77. So they've been going down every year. So that's a good thing. But prior to 2020, prior to the summer of Floyd, the summer of love, they were getting 60 to 70 a year. So they jumped up by 30 or 40 in 2020, and they're close to getting back to where they were pre-2020, but they're not quite there yet. So the murder rates are going down, but the assault rates have gone up since 2020 as well. The murder rates are dropping. They went up since 2020. The assault rates since 2020 are in the 500s, which is about where Chicago's at. That kid's got shorts on. It is so cold out. But pre-2020, they were in the 400s. So their assault rates went up, but they didn't go up, you know, not by a lot. Not like what the homicide rate went up and it's going down, but they're staying the same. The assault rate hasn't declined since 2020. It went up and then it just kind of stayed there. And their thefts surprisingly have dropped since 2020. They were around 3,000 to 4,000. That was their theft rate of 3,000 to 4,000 per 100,000 people, and it dropped down to about 2,500 per 100,000 people. And that could be because the theft rates are like legitimately went down, like the city legitimately got safer and there were less thefts, or that could be that they're not arresting people for thefts anymore. A lot of cities, if you're not stealing a certain amount of dollars worth of stuff, it doesn't even count. They don't register it. The police don't even show up to report it. A lot of times they're not considering a lot of things crimes anymore. So the theft rate went down a lot. It went down a lot. And you'd like to think, you'd like to think that it's because things are better, but it's probably just because they're not reporting it. And some of the assaults, I mean, the assaults are staying up, but that's even assaults in a lot of places. Unless it's some really bad assault, you know, it's not, nobody's getting prosecuted for this stuff. I don't know where the GPS is taking me. It's taking me up this ramp, but I have no idea where it's taking me, and it looks like it's almost a freeway thing. So if this is getting me on the freeway, I'll get off on the next exit, which it looks like it is. So anyway, the violent crime here is listed at 128% higher than the national average. Yeah, it wants me to get on the freeway. I'll just stay on this side road. Hard Rock Casino, Cincinnati. So their violent crime is listed at 128% above the national average, which is a little bit higher than regular city bad. That 100,000 or 100% higher is about where I put the regular city bad, that 80, 90, 100,000% worse. That's regular city, so it's slightly worse than regular city bad. Their property crime is right in regular city bad at 92% worse than the national average. And your odds of becoming a victim of a crime here is 1 in 22, which is, you know, again, maybe a little worse than regular city bad, but about regular city bad. The real bad cities, your odds of becoming a victim of a crime are like in the 1 in 8, 1 in 10. So 1 in 22, although, you know, it's not, It's not, you know, a good number. It's certainly nowhere near being really bad. And a GPS took me out of town. It keeps trying to get me back on the freeway, but we're just going to drive around a little bit more wherever I can go. So the cost of living here is around the national average, but the housing is 20% lower. So with the housing prices being 20% lower than the national average, the home ownership rate should be a lot higher than the 39% that their home ownership rate is. It should be a lot higher than that. It should be at least upper 40s, if not in the 50s, when your housing prices are that much cheaper than the rest of the country. But it's not, so that means they got a lot of people here that are owning a lot of the real estate, and there's a lot of people that are renters. And when you have people that live in a city and that don't really have a stake in the city, like if you own a home, you have a different sense of pride for your area than you do if you're renting. If you're renting, you're kind of transient. You can go in and out and leave, and you know, you can live in one place one week and a different place in another. But when you own a home, you're tied to that place. You're tied to that city. You're tied to that neighborhood. You're tied to those people that live next door to you. You're all tied together, and you, for the most part, people care about what goes on in their area more when they own their home than when they're just renting. Well, I guess there's actually now, wherever we're at, whichever neighborhood we're in now, must be one of the, now we're in the graffiti. You got grass and weeds growing up through the sidewalk. A lot of the garbage is what caught my attention right away. I'm like, suddenly we're in where there's a lot of garbage where there wasn't before. Yeah, this must be one of the not as nice neighborhoods. So the schools, surprisingly, the schools here graduate 54% of the students proficient at reading and math, which doesn't sound like a big number, but in America, that is good. If you can graduate over 50% of your students, oh, University of Cincinnati. If you can graduate over 50% of your students proficient at reading and math, you're doing something really good, because more homeless people, more garbage, because the national average is only 48%. And a lot of places can't come anywhere near 50, especially bad cities. They're in the 30%. But the state of Ohio, as a state, is 61% of their students graduate proficient at reading and math. So the state does really well. Cincinnati's doing really well. So there's actually hope for the city that it's not going to keep getting worse, the crime in that, because, I mean, at least, I mean, we're just accepting things that aren't even really positives anymore and calling them good. But 54% of the students graduating, you know, at a 12th grade level for reading and math is really good these days. So it's a good sign for the city that maybe they can turn things around. It's not going to be, you know, it's not going to just keep declining. Maybe they can fix this. But 83% of the people that live here completed the 8th grade, and only 82% completed high school. That number's a little on the low side, but kind of typical as well. And so here's some math. 54% of the 82% that have graduated is 44%. So 44% of the population of Cincinnati can read and do math at a 12th grade level. So it's not ideal, but it's so much better than a lot of these cities that it's not even funny. And I don't know where America's going to be in 10-15 years, because all of these kids that can't do anything, that, you know, if you can't read and write, there's not much you can do. Unless you have great skills as a quarterback or something and you can get a job in the NFL, you're not, I mean, you can't even work at places like McDonald's if you can't read and write. So I don't know what the population of America is going to be like going forward when, you know, right now we're at 48% of the country on average the kids graduate proficient at reading and math. And everybody, when they talk about this stuff, everybody's always like Baltimore, 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 and they like throw Baltimore under the bus as far as schooling goes. And it's the same thing with crime. They throw Chicago under the bus for everything with crime. And there are so many cities that are worse than Chicago. But they point out a couple cities and then they let all these other ones slide. Like Baltimore, we know that the schools are bad there. They pay per student way more than most cities, way more. And still nobody can graduate because somebody's just putting the money in their pocket. And the money's not even going to the schooling. And Chicago, they want to make out the bad guy. Their numbers are high in Chicago, but if you look at them on a per capita basis, Chicago's not even a bad city. Chicago, I bet the violent crime rate of Chicago is right around the same as Cincinnati. The violent crime percentage. I think this was, I think, 128 here, and I think Chicago's right around 130. It's not any worse. So if you go on a percentage, you know, based on population, Cincy's equally as bad as Chicago. Yeah, here's where the graffiti starts. But everybody throws Chicago under the bus, and you know, really, you could make an argument that this city is just as bad that Cincy is. You could make an argument that it's safer than Chicago if you look at the overall numbers, because getting 99 homicides isn't the same as Chicago that probably that same year in 2020 probably had 700, 800 of them. So there's no comparison there. But you know, if you're looking at comparing it with size, crime-wise, it's probably close to the same. And they got all these dumb speed bumps everywhere. These big, huge things that you can't go around. So that, you know, yeah, look, you can see them all the way up this road. So you know this road that I'm on is a road that they probably had a lot of drag racing or something on. But I'm going to do just a little bit more through this because this area looks like one of the not so nice areas. I'm going to have to look up Avondale Town Center. I'm going to have to look up some of these places to just see if I'm in how bad of a neighborhood I'm in, if this is one of their worst neighborhoods or not. But these speed bump things, they're just really annoying. I mean, they're not the ones that go all the way across the road, so you only have to go up them on one tire, but... And they must have found, I don't know, I mean, they must have found this is better for plowing snow. Having those there, as opposed to those cement, you know, long, skinny ones. But they have them everywhere. When I came in, they had them. They didn't have any through downtown, but there's so many stoplights in downtown, and maybe they're just not speeding through downtown. But yeah, this is already getting annoying, these speed bumps. So I'm going to let this play out a little bit. I don't know what neighborhood we're in, but we're outside of Cincy a little bit right here. So enjoy the next few minutes of Cincinnati, Ohio. people that are just hanging out on the streets. It's 8:23 a.m. on a Sunday morning, and it's cold out. And when I pulled into town, they must have a decent-sized drug problem here. There was this lady, when I first was, you know, like pulling into town, on the outskirts of town, she was just standing there, and she was on something where it looked like she physically could not move. And I don't, you know, I don't know. There has to be a bad drug. I've heard that Ohio has a problem. I didn't ever hear about Cincinnati, you know, specifically. Oh, this lady's going around cleaning stuff up. Good for her. But I think they have a bad drug problem. Now I don't even know what road. I'm back in some neighborhood. All right, well, I'm going to cut this off this time for real here. I hope you like the drive of Cincinnati, Ohio.